We all know that real estate has created more millionaires than any other industry on the planet. We also know that it has created a lot of heartache due to mismanagement, overborrowing, and just simple life events that happen to all of us. Welcome to the Cash Flow Pro podcast. My name is Casey Brown, and I am your fearless leader. And although we might be bourbon sipping and at times foul-mouthed Southerners, we will always do our best to be honest, straightforward, and due diligent with all of the information we pass along to you. Welcome to the show. Hey there, and welcome to today's episode of Cash Flow Pro, your daily real estate investing podcast and YouTube channel. I am here today with Sia Senior of Arrowhead Capital. Now, we were talking there briefly before the show, and she corrected my pronunciation. It is senior, not senior. It is senior. And she also told me that she almost didn't marry her husband because of that. So anyway, no, I'm sure he's a great guy, and I'm sure you're glad you did. So anyhow, Sia was just telling me that she and her husband are both licensed real estate agents. They work on referrals as far as that goes, but they are mainly in the capital raising space and the multifamily invest and real estate investing in general. So, Sia, how are you today?
I'm great, Casey. How are you doing?
Doing wonderful, doing wonderful. Just trying to figure out, I guess, what this weather is going to do. I'm sure by the time this podcast airs, it will be nice and warm and 100% humidity outside. But today, it's like 59 degrees.
Oh
And,
gosh.
so I actually had to wear jeans today, believe it or
Oh
not. So,
dear. I
anyhow,
can
so
relate. I can relate. Absolutely. We just
yeah,
had
and you
90
said it's
degrees
raining
and
there
yeah,
today,
it's
right?
raining.
Yes. Ugh. Ugh. I'd rather have the cool weather than I would the rain. The rain's kind of aggravating. So anyhow, well, see, I want you to start by kind of telling us a little bit about your background. I know you said something about teaching at one point, and ultimately what led you into the commercial real estate space, and then we'll get into how you move forward from there.
Sure. Great. Thanks for having me again. So
Absolutely.
I started real estate actually as a full-time teacher. My husband and I, we purchased our first home and realized how easy it was for that agent to, in
Sure.
2003, 2004,
A lot of
make
people
some
get in
money. We
that
were
way.
like, wait a
Yep.
minute, we can do this. So we
Yep.
both got our license. He was actually full-time as a IT worker for the federal government, and me as a teacher, a high school math teacher. And so I would on the weekends and summers do real estate. He would do it, on his off hours. And about 2005, he decided to go full time because the real estate market was really picking up in our area. And so we sold we rented out our first house that we lived in and moved into the house we live in now, and saw the potential of the rental income coming from that. And so
Yep.
adding on the real estate, agent piece of it, we started buying more rentals in the
Yep.
DC area, Baltimore, and to the
Single
point where
families or
single families. We bought a 4 unit in DC,
yep.
and up until the point where we decided, like 2015, because he stopped working about 2008 and went full
Okay.
time into real estate, and I moved into. I continued to work while we continued to add to our portfolio. And about 2015, after my third child, I realized I couldn't do the managing of our assets. We had a little bit over 15 at that point that we were self-managing, plus, managing the kids, managing the
Ah,
teaching,
yep.
doing the flips. It was a lot of work. So
Yep.
I decided to give up teaching. And from 2015 now, I've been
I
full
figured
time with
maybe you might have
him.
given up the kids. You didn't give up the
Well,
kids.
it was close. Let me tell you, I was like, kids.
50-50, right? Came close. Yep. I know that
Absolutely, real
feeling.
close, real close. But thankfully, we've had a great time doing real estate full
Sure.
time. Managing our assets. And a little over 2 years ago, we decided to transition into multifamily commercial real estate. And so we made some connections with other individuals. We got into a networking, mentoring program, and were able to, at the end of December 2021, connect with some people that we had met with and known and aligned in their values, and went down and did a joint venture, 16 units in Johnson, Tennessee. And then we also did a slight LP, investment, 134 units in Houston. So that's a
Wow.
quick story about how I've transitioned from being a full time teacher
Yeah.
to full time
I
real
think it's
estate
always
investor.
funny how many people are just into quick little deals in Houston. I mean, you're like, it's just it's an unbelievable place right now. I guess
just from what everybody
Right.
says and talks about, Houston is just exploding. So hopefully you were in on that deal early, and it's gonna pay off. So,
Yeah.
so let's kind of go back.
Mhm.
You and I chatted a little bit about where you look for or potentially find investors, and of course you mentioned um, the possibility of some past real estate, uh, like as a real estate agent, past clients
Mhm.
that maybe had some decent net worth and so on. So, how does that? How do you approach those folks now? Like let's say it's just been some time before you spoke with them. Do you just
Right.
call them up and say, "Hey, send me a check"?
Right. Well, we don't do that. The cool thing about I mean, we could, but that would be, wouldn't really work for us, I don't think. Just
I
because,
understand.
who we were as, who we were as agents, and who we now are as real estate investors, we're really about relationship building. And so,
Sure.
just like with our tenants and connecting with them and making sure that everything works out well, so we can continue to have the cash flow from them, our past clients, we have developed relationships. So we, connect with them every season. We do follow up phone calls just in general. So some of them aren't even aware of the opportunities right now that we have, particularly because we're trying to make sure that what their goals are for investing match up with what we will have to offer for them. And
Sure.
so right now we're just kind of in the, mode of trying to connect with them, figure out what their plans are, what their goals are, and how we could possibly help them.
Okay.
I think another thing that for us is going to be important is that we've both been working on making sure that we educate them, because we have
Okay.
a lot of people who are regular W-2 workers. They've been told, as we all have, about like, oh, invest in the stock market, you know, do this kind of thing. And they don't really have the experience or exposure to the benefits of investing in multifamily like this. And so for us, we're really committed and intentional about making sure that they understand the risks that are involved, but also the benefits. And so we've been basically working on educating them, right, so that they are confident and well prepared for all that they're going to be able to receive in this aspect.
How do you educate? Do you hold like webinars, or do you hold classes, or do you have a program on your website? How do you go about the education part?
Right. So right now we have a webinar that's just getting people informed about real estate in general, because I think that's the basic piece of it. And so we've been doing webinars to educate them on different aspects of real estate investing, because not everyone's going to want to do or be able to afford, right, to do the
Sure.
capital, do the not a lot of people are accredited investors or have the net worth to be able to do that, or are willing to risk that large amount of money
Yep.
on doing those types of investments. So we've been really broad about all aspects of investing in real estate, because we recognize that even if, just as we were able to grow our wealth on single family, that's something that might be an option for some people who are willing to be active. But for those that don't want to be active but have a high income and want to still invest, they can, passively invest with us as well. So our education piece is really going to be for the broad spectrum of people in investing, with a focus on what makes sense for them and informing them about that. I think the other piece that we do is, we're working on the social media aspect of it, because that's where you find a lot of people. That's where some people
Yep.
are hanging out. And so presenting the content in a way that makes sense, that inspires and gives them inspires them to move and take action, as opposed
Sure.
to just, looking back and scrolling, so that's kind
When
of
you
what we're
get
going to be
when you
doing.
get somebody that's been through your education, and you get on a call with them, and they're interested in potentially moving forward, what are a few of the objections that you typically hear, and then how do you handle those?
Right. So at this point, we've just been kind of connecting to inform, and so some of the objections that we hear are really more like, oh, it's really risky, investing in these types of deals, real estate. What if the tenant doesn't pay? Those kinds of objections. That's pretty much it, right? Because the concern with real estate is like, oh, you're not going to get paid. Look at what happened with the pandemic, and all of these, judges, giving the tenants, they don't have to pay; they could stay in the property. So that right now is probably the biggest one. In terms of how we, deal with that, is we go back to our experience having been in real estate. Besides being agents, but being investors and having our own portfolio for at least 15, 20 years, is
Sure.
to inform them about, how we are clear, how we're intentional about the types of tenants that we pick, the types of residents and the community that we create in our housing, such that we pick the right tenants that are going to be fully qualified, and we still have a relationship with them, such that if something happens, we can work together so that the rent still comes in. And if they need assistance, we have in the past with the pandemic, worked with them to get financial assistance from any government programs that were available to them, and just working with them. And so we've had great collection during the entire time of the pandemic, and we communicate that to the potential investors to let them know about that aspect.
Sure.
And then we also bring up the piece about no offense, but the stock market right now, talk about a risk. That's a risk that's very clear as
Well,
we can see, right? So
and here's the other part, and this is what really bothers me is as syndicators, we are basically required to disclose, like at every single turn. We're required to say, hey, this is a risky investment. You could lose this, that, I mean, basically everything we have to go through. Okay. And all of that comes down, and then but then you can log into any platform and you can buy penny stocks that have
right.
less than a 1% chance of taking off and becoming something. And it's like, and the issue that I see here is that the real estate investing part of it is probably the most secure,
Right.
because how many stocks over however long, I particularly, I always go back to a stock when I was growing up. It was called MCI. Okay, I think that's what it was. MCI was the telephone. They
Mm-hmm.
they
Yeah.
had some kind of technology, and it was the whole nighttime or evening calling was going on, and telemarketing was going on, and so on and so forth. And that stock alone cost no telling how much. At one time it was this, and then all of a sudden, kaboom! It's gone. It's gone. Bankrupt. Gone. Now somebody's investment is truly, truly gone
Right.
forever.
Right.
And then you and I are out trying to say, hey, here's some of these investments. And let's say you invested in an apartment building and for some reason didn't have it insured, right? It burns to the ground. No, you have nothing left except for what? You still have the dirt. You still have the ground. I mean, so what I'm getting at is it's like they put us in this corner over here, and they're like, okay, hey, you guys can talk about investing, and I get that we have to educate. I get that
Mm-hmm.
we have to tell people what it is, what they're investing in, but the fact that all of these things have to come into play, and we are actually, I don't even know what percentage more secure our investments are than some of those other
Mm-hmm.
that other. So I hate to get off on that, but
Right.
I just feel like we're kind of, as real estate syndicators, kind of put in a corner in a way.
Right.
I
Right.
mean, I get we're not licensed to trade securities, and
Right.
they've kind of given us a way to fly without necessarily having our wings fully spread. And so
Right.
it's, but anyway,
No, no,
that's
I completely understand. I think I completely agree with you. I think the biggest key is that, you know, if someone is going to be investing in the stock market and they're doing the day trades or, penny stocks or that kind of stuff, it's just them being involved. They're not being influenced. So the idea is that, hey, you take the risk, you made the investment, that's kind of your thing. I think when I think we have responsibility as real estate investors, syndicators, in the multifamily space, or even if we're not, just any kind of deal that you're doing where you're bringing on investors is to, inform, because we're introducing something that they wouldn't have access to in the first place, right? So I think
correct.
it's important that we are transparent about the risks, um, because we are leading them to something like this. But the benefits, as long as we are communicating, well, what the potential benefits could be, I don't see really an issue with them trying to invest, because it's the same thing, like you said, if you're going to be spending 10,000, 20,000, 50,000, and doing these types of investments, at least you have a hard asset here that
That's
isn't
right.
going to go on the whim of, someone tweeting something and then the stock drops down, so we don't
That's
have
right.
that impact. And that's what I use to inform and educate them about that. And then you can go,
Well,
let's
look
go
at a
see the
graph.
property. Let's
All you
take
have
a
to
look.
do all you have to do is look at a graph of real estate values. I mean,
Right.
we always have troughs in there, and you always have points where it's worth less today than it was a week ago. But
Right.
when you look at it on a 10-year scale, what does that say?
Right,
So
right.
anyway,
So the
I
other
just
thing I do is really reiterate our experience because
hmm
we have been managing, and I think that that allays some kind of fears because when you're with a group that is able to talk about managing the asset so that you can continue to get the income coming in from the tenants, right? And you can improve the management of the asset such that you can decrease the expenses, which ends up giving you a higher NOI. That is what we try to communicate with them in terms of our experience
do
or groups
you
that we're with.
manage yourself?
We
Do you all
do.
manage yourself?
We
So you're
manage everything but the 16
integrated.
unit in Tennessee. Uh huh. Yeah, we
Yeah,
manage it. My husband and I together.
awesome.
So that's been a lot of experience from us. We've learned a lot, but I
Yes.
think it's really benefited us such that we're where we are now, where we are able to, because of our experience, educate people about that when we go
Yep.
into the when we went into the 16 unit, and I'm on the asset management team, so knowing what kinds of things the property manager should be doing to make sure that we can continue to have income coming in. We can decrease the turnovers. We're communicating with the tenants because we still want them to have housing, right? And so it's a
Correct.
matter of making sure that we're communicating. No, we don't want to kick you out in the street, but we also need to recognize that rent needs to come in, and this is what you're paying in rent. Here's the market rent. It's not the same. Let's work on this together, kind of thing. And so we've been very successful with that. And so that's what I hope to kind of continue as we grow, our real estate
Well, and
investing.
that's the same thing. I went to a tenant of mine here. I just on one of my single families that I've got here locally, and very nice guy. He and I have always got along. We've always cut up, and whatever, and had a good relationship. So I consider him a friend, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when you have a friend and you go to him, you say, "Hey, man, listen, rent's got to go up." That creates a weird dynamic. But the bottom line was I just called him up and I said, "Listen, man, I hate to do this to you because we are friends, but my insurance just went up this. They're talking about property tax increases this. I'm on since it's a commercial loan. I'm on a fluctuating interest rate at the
Mm-hmm.
bank."
Right.
And I said, so I basically don't have any choice left but to go up on rent, if for nothing else, to cover the insurance expense that's just
Right.
gone up. And so again, and he was very grateful that I was straightforward with him. I didn't pull the wool over and try to. So I feel like when you get some of those things, if you're kind of in the what I call like the stabilizing type
Mm-hmm.
uh, point of the property, if you're just straight up with people and you're just like, hey, listen, this is the deal. We just bought this, and I feel like people are pretty receptive and willing to work with you, because the last thing you want to do is everybody move out. Now you may have some troublesome tenants
Right.
that's going to kind of take care of
Right. On its own. Right.
naturally.
Right.
But so, what's the biggest challenge with managing um, long distance like that?
So, well, because it's a 16 unit that we have a joint venture with, we don't, it's actually one of our benefits because I just basically am communicating with the point person. We only have one person talking to the property manager, but as a team, we share the experience and give some insight on opportunities, how to approach these different things, and making sure that our point person is communicating with the property manager about
Mhm.
how we want to approach the tenants with this. And I think it worked out well for us when we did the transition. A lot of them were month to month. And their rents have been grossly under market, but that's because it was self-managed.
Sure.
And so, once they recognize, we communicated from the beginning, we're going to be the new owners. Here's the property manager. Here's what we're looking at doing, giving them some time to take it in because obviously it's going to be a shock from, having, self-managed, kind of, owner managing and paying in cash and paying in dimes and whatever else to a more
Yeah.
professional kind of setup,
Yep.
giving them some time, recognizing, and letting them know, like, hey, we see you, we understand what you're going through. We're not going to just turn you over now, but recognize what the rent is in the market and what you're paying, and that it's
That's
four or
right.
$500 different. Let's come to an agreement to see how we can work this out. So we were able
Well,
to work with them on that.
sometimes I'll tell them. Sometimes I'll even tell a tenant. We had a different deal a couple months ago, and I said, "Listen, if you decide to move out, there's not going to be any hard feelings. We're still going to,
Right.
this wasn't my same tenant that I was talking about a minute ago,
Mhm.
but I said, go check around, go find, if you can find something better to rent for less money, then by all means, we're not trying to hold you back or keep you
Right.
tied here.
Right.
And the other thing, I've got a 10-year old, and she has this. I don't know if all kids are like this or if it's just her. Sometimes I feel like it's just her. I want to pull what little bit of hair I've got left out. But she has this really weird. I don't even know if it's again, all kids may be like this. Maybe something that everybody's like, oh yeah, hey, my kid's like that too. But if you tell her, say, hey, tomorrow morning we're going to get up, and then we're going to go do this, and then we're going to go do this, and then we're going to go do this. Okay. She goes to sleep, gets up next morning, everything's great. If we get up and we start out the door and I say, oh, shoot, we got to go do this before we do this, and then we've got to go grab that before we can do this, it's like she loses her mind. It's like everything just goes bonkers. And I love her to death, but it's like she was so set on doing this, this, and this, that when something even as minor of a change as it is gets thrown into the mix, she
Mhm.
becomes almost disoriented, really.
Right. Right.
And I feel like that's a little bit the same thing that I've seen with tenants. Like if you run in there on one day and you're like, hey, just bought the apartment, rent's going up, locks are getting changed, and we're going to do this and that and that. It's like everybody's like, I, I was just trying to go to work today. What?
Right.
And so you're right. And when you say you set out a timeline and you're like, hey, listen, I'm Casey Brown and we just purchased the unit. Nothing's going to change for a little while. Just go about your way. I just want to introduce myself.
Hi, this is Casey Brown, host of the Cash Flow Pro podcast and YouTube channel. Have you been thinking about investing in real estate but just don't know where to begin? I'd like to help by inviting you to check out our website at www.3000capital.com. There you will find an array of material that will help you learn all about real estate syndication. And while you're there, be sure to check out our free video series download titled 5 Must-Know Keys to Success in Passive Real Estate Investing. I'd also like to personally thank you for making Cash Flow Pro part of your day. Now, back to the show.
Then a couple days later or a week later, whatever it is, work with people like that, because what you don't want to do is lose the decent quality tenants that you do have
Absolutely.
because you're just an ass about it. And
Right.
I hate to say that, but I mean, it's just, so many of us have this, and I've seen so many real estate investors and syndicators and one-off deal owners who take a podium stance at their
Hmm.
tenant, and it's not
Yes.
right.
Right. That's a great
And
story. One, yes, the kids are like that because I have three, 11, 9, and 7, and
so
you
it's
are
not
right.
just a me. It's not just a my kid. I've got five. I just have one that's worse about that than anything.
Oh yeah,
Any of them.
yeah. The flashback, that backlash is nothing else. So yeah, we try our best to kind of like we said this, but and graciously, I'm sorry, mommy made a mistake. Can we, so that kind of softens
Yep.
a little bit. But that's just that's definitely. And it could be the age too. Who knows? But
Sure.
yeah, you're right. Like making sure that you communicate. And sorry, and part
Oh,
of it is. I thought I turned it off. I'm sorry. That's my husband because it was reggae.
ah, I heard you said he's from Jamaica. I was like, I guarantee you that's who's calling.
Yeah, that was him. That was him. Sorry. But I was saying, like, part of I think the benefit is when you approach the tenants like that and the residents, you're recognizing you're seeing their humanity, right? Because out in society, it's like, oh, landlord's awful, kind of thing. But when you
Yep.
present and say, like, hey, we're the new owners, our team is very excited about this. We want to, give you a wonderful place to live. We're looking at doing these types of changes. We're going to be fixing those things that were an issue, you know, giving them that, which is what we did. Our group, went and found out what the items were from due diligence, and hey, we need to fix these things, and find out from them what they were concerned about. We had the property manager do that, and so we addressed those things. And then after that was done, it was like, okay, just to give you a heads up, rent's about 1,200 in the area, and you're paying 7. So there's going to be some working here because we still
Yeah.
have bills to pay and that kind of stuff. And I think you
Well, you don't
recognize
go
that,
from
right?
7 to 12. Like
Right,
you don't
right,
call them up and say, "Hey,
right.
tomorrow we're going to 1,200."
Right.
You
Right.
you say, hey, over the next 6 months, we're going to have a gradual increase. This is what it's
Right.
going to increase to.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If it's more than you can afford, we certainly understand. If
Right.
there's anything we can do to help, let us know.
Right. Yep.
And again, and that's one of the big things. So as a fund of funds, which is what our business model is, that's one of
Mm-hmm.
the first things that we look at is quality of life at the sponsors assets,
Okay.
and that plays into that big
Mm-hmm.
time, because if somebody's being an ass to the tenants, you're probably not going to want to be involved in a business deal with them, because it's
Right.
obvious that that they feel some sort of whatever. So yeah, quality of
Yeah.
life stuff, and just overall easiness of making people feel like that's their home, because it
Right.
is at the
Yeah.
end of the day. So,
Yep.
so
Absolutely.
what do you all have on the in the pipeline? Is there not that I want you to reveal any specific deals that maybe you're about to score or anything like that, but
Yeah.
what do you all
Yeah.
have kind of moving
So
right now?
we're doing a lot of underwriting on deals. We're looking at a couple in the DC area. You know, our focus in this area, 2.5 mile, 2.5 hour radius from where we are, is anything between 5 and 100 that we can take down either as an individual, like as a ourselves for a
Sure.
personal portfolio, or something that we can do with joint venture partners. If it's big enough, then we would like to syndicate that. We've been, like I said, working with our investors to kind of see what they're looking for, if they're cash flow people, or if they're okay with a nice appreciation deal kind of thing. So we're working on those and connecting with other investors to in North and South Carolina. That's our secondary markets that we're interested in.
What was
And
that? I'm sorry.
North and South Carolina, North Carolina, South
Okay.
Carolina.
Yep.
We like
Yep.
those areas as
Absolutely.
well. And just really connecting with people to see what we can do together. We're excited about this, and we're looking forward to getting some of our investors who have no clue about this in the game. You know what I mean? To
Yeah.
kind of help them with their generational wealth and their cash flow and passive income that they probably didn't even know they could
Well,
do.
if
So
nothing else, set them up for something that's anti-inflation,
yes, absolutely.
or an inflation hedge, rather, more
Right.
so than just and that's the whole thing is, and again, it all circles right back around to what you said:
Yeah.
and handling that part of it is paramount to the success of any investment model. And even if they don't invest with you, educating them and making them aware of alternative investments and things that
Hmm.
can be done differently is where it's at. So, all right, so we're kind of running out of time here, and we've got a couple of questions that I ask every guest that's on the show. All of them are the same. There's no right or wrong answer, but what is the best book that you've most recently read or are currently reading?
Ooh. Well, my two favorite books that I always go back to them and use them as a point of reference. The first one is A Millionaire Real Estate Investor by Gary Keller. I just
Yep.
love that book, and I tell people about it all the time. I just think that it's a great foundational book and gives a great picture about how real estate should be approached. And
Yep.
that's we're buy and hold investors, so that is like just right up our alley. And then
Yep.
he also worked on the One Thing book, which I like because it helps me really focusing on what's important and not be distracted, and really get the important things done first, so that
Yep.
I can move forward with all the goals that I have. So those two are my favorite books, and I read them off and on. Like I just go back to them, as
Sure.
I do other
Sure.
books. So yeah.
Sure. Well, and I think if you can understand the basis of just what he gets across in the first book that you mentioned there, I mean, just the very basics. Even if you don't get into, I mean, just anyway,
Right.
I'm in agreement with you. So, next question is, what is a dream vacation that you have either taken or hope to take?
Ooh, okay. Well, I guess our dream vacation, we went to Aruba for our honeymoon. I loved
Oh,
it. It was
yes,
great years ago. And
yes,
so that was, I hope to go back soon. We travel through the Caribbean, and I'm getting ready to get our kids going. Hopefully, we'll be heading to someplace like Costa Rica
yeah.
soon. That's my goal.
We were getting ready to go to Aruba several years ago, and I remember looking at the weather, and there was, I don't know, 80% chance of rain every day,
Oh,
and I was like,
wow.
gosh dang it, this sucks, this stinks. It's gonna rain every day. Well, I didn't know that it rains every day.
Yes.
Basically, every day it rains, no matter whether whatever, but it rains for like 8 minutes, and
Uh,
then
It's gone.
it's over and it's gone.
Yes.
And then 8 or 10 hours later, it might rain for another 8 minutes.
Right.
Little breeze, 70-degree weather. It is the most perfect place on earth as far as
Beautiful. It's beautiful. Yeah.
How can the listeners reach out to hook up with you? If again, for the listeners, I want to highly recommend her as a point of reference for education and coming back. So, how can the listeners reach out to you and get in touch if they've heard something they want to learn about or talk further with you about something like that?
Sure. So I'm in two places. You can go to our web www.arrowheadcap.com, and that's where we have, all the information about us, our business, and the webinars are listed there as well. You can also find me on LinkedIn. I like to post here and there and connect with people and inspire,
Sure.
and so I use that as a means as well of communicating with people.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Sia, thank you so much. And we appreciate you taking the time to be on here with us. And I know your husband's probably ready for you to call him back and see what he's doing and tell him that we appreciate everything that you all do up there and all the education that you're giving for the industry. So thank you so much again. And I hope everybody has a wonderful rest of their day. Sia, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Cashflow Pro is hosted by Casey Brown, founder and CEO of 3000 Capital, a commercial real estate investment firm committed to providing its investors with ongoing cash flow and helping them build long-term wealth. If you enjoyed today's podcast, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you'll be notified about all our future episodes. You can find more information about us and our investment philosophy by clicking the link in the show notes below. Thanks for listening.